Okay, so you're looking to buy land near Orlando, Florida? Well, this is the video for you, because in this video, I'm going to talk about my journey and some of the struggles I ran into when buying land in Orlando, because I went to build a home, and like finding land was it was insane. It was hard. It was chaos. And in this video, I'm going to cover everything that I ran into and things that you probably never thought about when it came to buying land near Orlando, Florida. So let's get into it. What's up, everyone? My name is Cameron Hides, and on this channel I talk about moving to and living in Orlando, Florida, and everything that comes with that. And I drop videos every Tuesday and Thursday respectively, and I absolutely love it. But what I love even more, being a licensed real estate agent here in Orlando, Florida, is helping you with your real estate decisions when moving to or from Orlando and Central Florida as a whole. So if that's you and you need help, well, this number popping up below is how you can get a hold of me. Give me a call, text, email. It doesn't matter how you get a hold of me. I'm here to help you make that move. I've done it. Me and the team, we've all done it. We've been there. It's hard. It struggles. Let us help you make that a seamless process. Or if not, hey, maybe you just want a conversation to find out if this is the area for you, or if maybe Florida just isn't a place for you in general. Happy to have that conversation as well. Doesn't matter when you reach out, days, nights, weekends, we're here. So getting into it. So buying land near Orlando. So I think I hear, in being an agent, a lot of times I have this conversation with a lot of people. And even before I moved to Florida, years back, it's something people always bring up because everyone wants to build their own home. They're like, Cameron, I don't want a community. I don't want an HOA. I don't want things that are just hold me down. I kind of want to build. Either I'm looking to build a home, or maybe you run a business where you just need the land. Either way, there's a lot of things that go into it. And especially here in Florida, and for those of you who live here, you're probably going to already know, but for those who aren't, like a big thing that comes into it first that you have to think about is like, you're not just going out to buy any land, right? So when it comes to each area, and it doesn't matter where it is in any state, does not matter, there are things called zoning laws, which means that each parcel of land, parcel being this like the acreage of land, the lot of land you're looking at, is zoned for certain things, whether it's residential for houses, whether it's for business, whether it's mixed, maybe it's for farming only. Like there are so many. Every state and county has their own designations, and that in itself is a chaotic process. So obviously, like I said, as I talk about this, I'm going to go through my journey. So now that we understand like some of the big issues up front, so you're not just buying a regular house where you can live there, right? With land, you run into those issues up front. So even if you find an area, you're like, look, there's 5 acres, that's exactly where I want to live. And you go to look at it and you're like, oh, well, this isn't zoned for residential, or maybe there's environmental issues, right? Which, like I said before, those who live in Florida, you already know, like if it's considered wetlands, like good luck, you are not going to be able to build on that property, most likely. There's a lot of environmental factors. And to be honest with you, coming from even New York State, or California especially, like most land I'd say you were able to build on, unless it was there were certain areas, even California, where you would run into issues where you couldn't build on it because there were protected wildlife land on that property, because certain animals were considered to live in that area that are going to extinct. And Florida's no different. In fact, I think it's more of an issue than those other states. Even growing up in New York, I just didn't realize that was an issue in most parts, because a lot of where I grew up was just kind of flat farmland. So if you could get land, you probably could build as long as you were able to qualify and afford it. But here in Florida, like that was definitely one of the things we ran into, is like once you start looking for land, it's like, oh, man, like what can we actually, like, are we able to actually build on this lot? And it's one of those things where, it's not like a complicated process to figure that out. Hopefully the agent or the individual who's selling the lot has that information already. But again, no matter who it is, they're going to be like, oh, you have to research it yourself. No kidding. So unfortunately, that is something that you always need to do your due diligence on. And it really creates an issue up front, especially when we were looking for our lot. Because once we decided, like, we don't want to, this market, it was crazy. It was the peak of the COVID craziness. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this anymore. My wife's like, I want what I couldn't have before in a different state. And I'm like, well, let's go. I guess we're building. And looking for lots, like thankfully had experience already doing a lot of that. So I knew the process up front. But man, is it a pain in the butt, especially like you'd find lots and land and then you're like, oh, man, I can't build here. Or, maybe there's not utilities in the spot, especially once you get farther and farther from the city. Or you find a lot up front and then you're like, oh, wait, it's landlocked, meaning there's like people built around this lot, and like no wonder it's cheap because it doesn't have access, and like it was just such a frustrating process. And like Florida, this goes for any state. It's not just something that's special to Florida, but it's definitely something we run into a lot, especially if you're trying to stay close to the 4 and staying at a certain budget. Which takes me into my next thing, which is like, keep in mind, like, it's getting financing for land is like next to impossible. And even if you do find a bank or lender that's willing to lend on it, you're probably, one, going to have an insanely high interest rate, but two, even aside from that fact, you're still going to be putting at least 50% down. Now, there are a lot of ways to make that lower, a lot of things that go into it to make it less and less, but like when it came to looking for land, like you can't just go out there and be like, I'm going to put 3.5% down on this lot. Like it just doesn't happen, right? Like there's no meat for the bank to secure itself against giving you all that money, right? Like there are no, like, against popular belief in today's world, like there are no free handouts. Sorry, there's just not. And land is definitely one of the biggest issues for a lot of people, is they have this great vision or they want to do this thing, even if it's like for a business purpose, right? Like you need to be able to get the land. And unfortunately, like most banks are not going to go out there. If you do find, like I said, lenders, like they're going to want you to put almost majority of the money down anyways. Now, obviously the land is primarily a cash business. Now, that being said, you're like, well, Cameron, were you just that wealthy and you had, about $50K to show for the lot you purchased? No, I did not at that time. So you had to move a family across country. Like, it's expensive. You ever tried to leave California? Like, man, they charge you a premium. It's like once you get in, it's like good luck trying to get out. And what we were able to do, and this is also for veterans out there, is do a zero money down VA loan to build. Now, that being said, yes, you can get construction loans for building on just standalone lots. Now, if you've ever looked at new construction communities, yes, like a lot of times you're like, but Cameron, I'll be able to get like closing costs that sits on that. I'm able to get these things and still do like my 3.5 down and all this stuff. Like, yes, because the builders usually work with a lender who's okay with that risk, because the builder has a track record, the builder has all these things in place, and they know that it's a secure loan. Even if they build it, like they're getting on the back end by getting clients that show up to it. When you're building individually, a lot of times you are sourcing your own builder and you have to find your own lender and meet the two together. Now, the VA build loan, great for veterans, awesome ability. Like you can do zero down or just like your funding fee as well when it comes to building that lot. But don't think if you're not a veteran that you're just sold out either. Like there are options. Now, there is a thing called a USDA loan. Now, I will preface this. There are stringent requirements for this type of loan, and it's not always zero down. I know a lot of people like to tout, oh, it's zero down, but there's so many minute differences and qualifications for the USDA loan that just because you're a regular Joe Smo, maybe you can't get the VA loan, then you try to go to USDA loan route. You have to make sure you qualify. You have to be below a certain medium income for the area that's set by the government. You have to make sure you have like all these other minute things. And on top of that, only certain areas are designated for use of that loan, because guess what? It's mainly meant for farming communities to help you finance farms or maybe build on farmland and be able to use it for that purpose. Like there's a lot of minute things that go into that. So if you want to know more about it, shoot me a call, text, email. Like I've done a lot of research into it because it was something that I feel like could be beneficial to a lot of people, and I can help you figure out if where you want to live could even qualify for that. You just go on a website, super simple, not hard to research at all. Or you can look up yourself, look up USDA loans, map, and you'll be able to find it. It's not that hard to find. So that's an option to put low or almost no money down for a build loan, potentially, if you meet all that criteria. Like I said, it's stringent, but it's just, I'd say approach every option as you can. That being said, I've also seen, like, if you find a builder, a lot of times if they're big enough, they might actually have lender partners that will help, and you could do like a 10% down conventional loan. So that's another option. Like instead of having to put a full 20, maybe you have the money and you're able to put that minimum 10% down to build a home. Again, unfortunately, no handouts when it comes to building a house. Like there are still a lot of stringent. Even if you get financed, guess what? You got to find the land. You got to find the lots. And a lot of times, there's a lot of people that just sell land themselves and having to look on the websites and research it. Like it's so many nuances. And like I said, we would find lots and we'd be like, yes, we found our lot. And then it'd be landlocked and it wasn't disclosed, of course. Go figure. Or you'd show up and you're like, oh yeah, but like half the property is zoned for wetlands. You can't build except for this small, minute area. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not enough for the plans we already had designed. And it's just such a mess going into it and figuring out But like obviously financing is usually the biggest thing that deters people, because if you don't have the money, you don't have the cash, you're kind of say la vie. That being said, obviously the farther you go away from populated areas, the cheaper the land gets. So you can definitely have that option. And there are still land and lots that are coming for sale in Central Florida. And I say, well, yes, Orlando, obviously, but even closer to Tampa, like they're there. But land has gone up because it's become more competition for people fighting, especially builders, to get this land. Now, that being said, like mine was like a 3/4 acre lot when we got it. And thankfully the builder had purchased it already and we got lucky. So keep in mind, that's also another option, is once you find a builder, if it's an active builder in this area, sometimes they buy lots in advance because they know they have plenty of clients searching, and then they'll approach you and say, hey, we already found a lot. Go check it out. If this lot is good, we already have it and we can rope it into one big deal. I've seen it happen for me. Like that is still a great option. So you definitely approach that if you're looking to build. But that being said, like I also have a lot that I've identified here in Orlando. And a lot of times you'd be surprised how often land is just passed down to family members and things like that. And you can, like, there's a lot of public records, stuff like that you can access. Obviously, like, don't approach me for that. Like, you just do your own research. And sometimes maybe you can find someone if you find someone who owns land, like you could knock that out yourself, and there you go, you found the lot. But land it's a tricky business. It's not like it's not as refined as residential real estate sales. And that being said, also, even if let's say when you go to buy a lot, even if you got financing, we went to buy it, and you still have to have it surveyed to make sure that you can actually even build on it, because the environmental and like zoning and all that stuff, it changes so much. So let's say the owner selling it is in a position where they're like, well, this was good like 3 years ago. Well, guess what? It might not be good now. So it's something you have to run into. Or maybe you're like me and you're like, man, like I see a lot across the street. I wonder if I could buy that. And maybe somehow you're able to get a hold of that individual that owns it. And you're like, well, I want to farm over there. So I'm not going to put a house, but I want to farm and things like that. Like, again, zonings play into that, because even wetlands, like technically you're not even allowed to disturb the trees on that property. And like, it gets so complicated. So you want to make sure you get it surveyed, get it checked out. And that's a whole nother process, which is why if you are looking to do land, again, just reach out to us and the team. And I'm happy to literally be there to help you walk through that process and finding it. Cause I went through the pains. I've done it myself. Like, yes, I've helped clients do it in the past, but hey, when I moved to Florida, I got to experience actually doing it personally myself. And man, was it painful. But at the same time, like, it was a really great experience because I got to really get in depth on that process from a personal side. And, it's stressful. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Like, buying land is like, because it's not as simple as a house. And you think a house would be more complicated. But getting a land, like, it really does become more complicated, because if you're not buying cash, you have to make sure you get financing, get a loan. Do you have enough to put the money down? Even if you're like let's say you're doing a veteran loan or USDA loan, you're not putting money down because you're able to qualify. Like, what other things have to fall into place, like getting it surveyed, getting it zoned, like making sure everything else is solid. And keep in mind that if you're getting it financed, unless you're putting like a substantial high payment down to get like a financed land loan for whatever reason, you're able to qualify for that. Well, guess what? If you are building, there are timelines the bank requires. So pretty much, like, there is no like, hey, I'm going to buy the land and then maybe a couple years down the road I'll start building. No, you have to go straight into that process. The builder will be putting in permits immediately once you close that lot. So a lot that goes into it. People really get concerned with how like expensive land has gotten in Central Florida. And keep in mind, like, it's one of those things where it all depends on the need. And right now people need more homes built, so that the price is going to go up. That being said, even if you find land, another thing that actually popped into my head right now is an issue to where you run into issues where some sellers, especially if it's not represented by an agent, but it's just someone who's an individual, get very weary when people have financing. Because when you're paying all cash, like, you can close on the lot no matter what happens, right? But when you're doing financing, the bank needs to make sure that they get fits their needs. So it's a whole nother issue. And a lot of people who own land, they want it closed immediately. They're like, dude, the less time I have to pay taxes on this lot, the better. So it's something that works into it. Also, keep in mind, even if you are buying a lot, like, you're still responsible for the taxes yourself, even if you're paying cash. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind, is making sure that you understand what your tax burden will be once you close on that lot, because you are going to be responsible for it. Now, some builders, when they get the build loan, will cover those costs. I know mine did, but It's all variable. You have to make sure you get all this information up front and realize it's not as simple as just coming to Orlando and being like, all right, I'm going to find a lot, I'm going to build a house right away, or I'm going to do my farm, or I'm just going to get lot right away. Like it's a huge process. And keep in mind, sometimes like the cool thing I love about land is like you look at like some lots that I see, you know, because I'm already planning like, you know, years down the road when we do want to expand to have a farm and have more space in the area, is let's say you find a lot, right? Like the reason I love land is because there's so many options. There's so much like special things that you think. I'm a future thinker, right? And what's cool about land is there's only so much of it, right? There's only so much. Now, if you buy a lot and you have the money to get a lot in a good area, let's say it's like in Davenport where a lot of expansions coming into Polk County down the, you know, heading west on the 4, or maybe you're able to get, you know, find lots in like North Orlando, which is still starting to boom a little bit, or maybe in St. Cloud, right? And you're like, look, I can buy this lot, and behind it there's a lot that's landlocked. It gets useless. Well, it puts you in a good position to where, let's say you build a house, and behind your house is someone owns a lot, but there's no access to it. So it's pretty much useless. A lot of times, maybe you can go to the owner and say, hey, like, you know, your lot's useless, and you can get it for possibly a good price, or negotiate maybe seller financing on the lot and do all that stuff. Oh, that's another thing. Now, when you're building a home, a lot of times the bank's going to want to rope all those costs into one. But if you're just looking to own the lot outright and you're able to go, you know, you're able to find a seller, you know, a lot of times I have seen it before where sellers will negotiate, where they become the bank and they negotiate a rate and down payment and like everything with you. You get it drawn up by a lawyer. But that's another option with land that's way more common, is sometimes you can find sellers who are willing to finance a lot because they just want it gone. You take over the tax burden, but at the same time, it gives you a benefit because you're taking the land off their way. And that's why, going back to what I was saying before with landlocked lots, is that's something that I'm really looking into as a family. When we had a couple years down the road, we start to build up our funds and things like that, is building land, especially if there's landlocked lots behind it, not wetlands, because I hate how, you know, and it's really common, so you can't really avoid it. But, you know, in that situation, now you could potentially expand your land even more and own more land, because who else is going to have access to it, you know? And in a lot of those cases, like if someone wanted to build on that lot in the middle of that's landlocked, they'll have to negotiate with the seller to get access to it, and that's not always guaranteed. So again, I hope this video was informative to you. I hope I gave you a good idea if it's possible. Yes, land has gone up in price. Is it possible? Absolutely. You have to figure out how you're going to finance it. You got to get prepared for what you're looking for. How big of a lot do you want? Where do you want it? And that goes into how much you can afford. Like, what's your overall amount? Because you might be approved right for 400 grand. But if it's going to cost 300 to build or 350 to build, that only leaves you 50K to buy a lot. So you have to work in all these numbers to make sure that you line up, because if it goes excess, guess who's paying for it? You are. So it's possible. Got to get that financing in order. Got to get figured out what you're going to do in your game plan for getting that lot. And if you really do have questions, or you're just, like, I have no idea where to start, Cam, I don't even know if I could qualify to build a lot. Hey, give me a call, shoot me a text, whatever you have to do. I'm here to have that conversation with you. Whether you're moving to Orlando, maybe you're already here and you're like, look, I'm renting and I'm looking, I have the money, but I don't know if I want to buy. I think I want to build, or I want to get a lot to where I can farm while also living in this area. Hey, I've heard all of it. I've helped people with all of it. Heck, we think of it daily ourselves. So happy to have that conversation. Again, here's the number down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope I gave you better insight into buying land in Orlando. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.